The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Here we go, off and rolling on a Thursday as football season is starting to come into shape. ESPN has revealed its initial slate of SEC football games. Tennessee's budget is sixth in the SEC. Is that a concern? We continue our list of most important balls heading into summer workouts. We go in the defensive backfield. Florida lands five-star Colorado transfer Carmanji McClain. Should you be concerned the Gators are getting their NIL act together? Easy for me to say. Josh Heupel falls to number 23 in the CBS coaching rankings and set up for a special guest. Cole Cubelic of ESPN will join us a little bit later on the program. So if you're excited with football season just a couple of months away, and also Kim Caldwell, which we might mention at some point in the program, doing quite well in the recruiting trail. Still a lot going on. So welcome. Hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. The program represented by Banks and Jones. Play to win. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
100 days till kickoff, baby. 100 days till football season starts today.
Is it 100 today, as a matter of fact?
It's 100 today.
And what
By the way,
that?
I love how I'm counting down to football season and not until when my child is born in 3 weeks. But you know,
You got to have your priorities in order.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. What's the first game?
The
Are you
very
counting
first
down to the actual first Saturday or the first game?
The very first game.
Okay.
The very first game is going to be, I do believe, pulling it up now. So guys, just bear with me for like 1 second here because we'll have it. Okay. It'll be Saturday, August the 24th. You got SMU, Nevada, Montana State, New Mexico, Delaware State, Hawaii, and out in Dublin, Florida State, Georgia Tech.
Okay. Do the countdown for me, Florida State, Georgia Tech, because that's at least somewhat of a premier matchup. I mean, and Joseph says it right. You're counting down the days to football season. Joseph says, to be honest, how many touchdowns is your baby going to score? Your priorities are correct, Caleb. That's right. I mean, we could have a Calhoun quarterback at Tennessee one day.
Yeah, but we got to wait.
Yeah, but right now we got at least get him through like second grade to see if he's got the talent level.
I saw a hilarious post. It was about a week ago, and it was like, you know, when you move to a new place and you're looking for a new church, and it's like you're trying to visit around. You're like, what's the biggest red flag about a church? And someone's like, when they have services on football Saturdays and Sundays. He's like, just out of sheer caution, church should be canceled from August to February.
You told your wife that your baby is not allowed to be born. You're not allowed to have a child during football season, right? You all ready to discuss that and the timing of it. Don't want to get into that. We
had a wedding in the middle of August in Memphis because I told her we can't have it during football season.
Today's tough question. I don't want to hear about any of that about Mr. and Mrs. Calhoun. Today's tough question. Here we go. And it's brought to you by our friends at the Hemp House.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
With Oklahoma and Texas now in the conference, Tennessee is sixth in the SEC in budget spending. Is that a concern? I got to be honest, Caleb. Maybe a notch or two higher than I thought it would be. I think that's pretty good. And we'll break down the numbers and pull up the fantastic graphic that breaks it down as well. And this coming from our friends. We originally saw it Saturday down south, and it comes from a gentleman who just loves to do math, absolutely loves to do math, Tony Altamore. So your thoughts on seventh best in the newly expanded SEC?
This was a giant red flag for me at first, by the way. It's the 6th best, isn't it? I thought it was the 6th best. Is it the 7th best?
Well, let's hope we wrote that correctly. I think I did.
I will change the headline now. I apologize, everybody. It's the 7th best in the SEC.
No problem. 7th best in the SEC. Here we go.
Yes. So that's that.
We'll just reset that whole thing. Should Tennessee be concerned that they have the 7th best athletic budget in the SEC?
I at first thought it was a red flag that they should be concerned, because I said Tennessee's way around not being in a football-rich state was having money that other schools don't have, and that includes like the Oklahomas and people like that in Texas. But then I broke down deeper into this, and actually, I encourage you guys all to read Dave's column on it. He broke it down better than anybody.
I think
Tennessee has hired coaches at a very affordable price because they weren't high-profile coaches when they hired them. Tony Vitello was an assistant when he got hired at Tennessee, so it wasn't like they had to open up the checkbook Nick Saban style. Now, you can say, before I go further, you can say, well, yeah, but once they start performing, you have to pay them. That's true. But if you have to increase their contract from a very minuscule salary, that's a lot easier than having to increase their contract from the Nick Saban initial salary. So they're already getting them on a better budget than a lot of other schools. They're Josh Heupel from UCF. They just hired Kim Caldwell from Marshall. They were able to get her on a massive budget, and they were able to get Tony Vitello, who was an assistant. So the budget on hiring coaches that they've had to spend is not as high as other schools. That's reduced their budget. And then most notably, in the age of NIL, I think a lot of the money that you would have put in your athletic budget in previous years that came from donors, you're now using in collectives to try to buy recruits and transfers. And I think that's what Tennessee's doing with this.
And the school doesn't feel like they've lost money on that because it makes their product better, which in turn they can sell it for more. They don't sell it for more at the Hemp House. The premier hemp dispensary is online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. I just think you need to be in that top grouping or so of about 10 to 12. Ole Miss is about 5th from last, but I believe they can win a national championship because they found the right guy in Lane Kiffin that needed that job every bit as much as they needed him. Just think you have to be a little craftier. I think Tennessee will be in the position that they can retain Josh Heupel for however much cash he needs at some point, or they can go out and make a big splash hire if he decides to go to the NFL. So I think being 6th in the SEC is really just fine. I don't have a problem with that. Your thoughts while I go ahead and share this on the screen so people can see what we're talking about in the ratings. It's not going to be easy to see. I'm going to warn you, but go ahead, Caleb. As far as being 6th, I don't think that hurts you.
7th.
7th.
Yes,
7th.
7th. No, I don't think it's totally my fault. I've confused everybody because I wrote 6th. I don't know why I did that. Total brain lapse.
7th.
I made a Butch Jones on after a touchdown, not going for 2 decision. Okay, but I think Josh Heupel. I think being 7th is fine given where the money is being diverted. Now, obviously, the smart move, guys, is to hire a coach because he can bring his dad in as defensive coordinator, and you give their staff all of their staff members a gigantic salary and a limited buyout, because that's how you go win championships, right, Dave? What you do with Lane Kiffin.
Yes. That's how you do it. You're supposed to assemble this superstar staff, and that has not been Josh Heupel's approach. But if he wanted to, I think he could have had the money to do it. Let me share some of these numbers and see what stands out to you. I'm going to go ahead and share that on the screen. Again, Tony Altamore was nice enough to put this together as I've hit the wrong button 38 times. All right, here we go. We're going to pull that up right now. Number 1 was Texas. That was hardly a surprise, right, Caleb?
Correct. Not a surprise at all.
Okay. And I know you're having trouble seeing this probably at home, but number 2 was Alabama. Given their success, hardly a surprise, right?
Correct. Not a surprise at all.
LSU has 2 national champions. They're number 3 at $199 million. Not a surprise, right?
Yeah, and they also opened the checkbook for Brian Kelly because that's what they had to do to get him from Notre Dame. So
well, but these are not just expenditures. This is the overall budget. So this is the
right,
fact
but
that
that's part of it.
They could afford Brian Kelly. Is how
Right.
I would phrase that. I don't think Mississippi State could have afforded Brian Kelly. So then you have Oklahoma, oil money. I was a little surprised that they came in as high as they did. I thought Texas A&M's budget would be bigger. They came in next at the 5th spot. Then Auburn at the 6th spot. Tennessee at 7th, followed by Georgia. Something tells me they'll rise up in the coming years as more and more students will want to go to Georgia because of football, which isn't the greatest reason to choose a college, but you do what you want to. Then Florida, Kentucky, Arkansas, South Carolina, Ole Miss. After that, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State. If I'm those 3 schools at 141 million and less, which is getting close to half of that 232 million that Texas has, I'm worried about getting relegated if there is some sort of super conference that's put together. The 3 schools I'm lopping off pretty easily would be Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, and Missouri, despite what they did last year, would be pretty close to the chopping block. Caleb, am I wrong?
Well, the thing that could save them is that if there is a super conference, and again, we have no idea how realignment is going to happen. Sorry, I'm going to pull us back up just because people can't really see that, and I think they'd rather see us when we break this stuff down.
Probably. It was not a great graphic. Go ahead.
But the thing that I think Tennessee, that the SEC, and that could help Mississippi State and Vanderbilt is if there is a super conference in the future, as we think is probably coming, or at least SEC and Big Ten, and they adopt their own models and nix the NCAA, and if Congress addresses the NIL thing, you could eventually see an era where revenue sharing comes into play and where they try the NFL model of parity. And
yeah, I don't see that being, of all the things that we talk about doable, paying players, we didn't think it was possible. Done. Transfer easily done. We didn't think that was possible. Super conference, I think is possible and will happen. But revenue sharing between schools, that seems like the biggest leap from traditional football that we've ever had.
I mean, they already partially do it. Okay, with the
TV money.
biggest, with TV money. Let's be honest. That SEC deal with CBS and now the new one with ESPN, they didn't sit there and say, "Well, we can get some Vanderbilt games, guys. We gotta shell out money for that." No, they paid that money because they want Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia, the revenue drivers. But Vanderbilt's getting the same cut of that check. As a matter of fact, go back and look. You can trace the fall of Tennessee football, the gradual decline, with the SEC signing bigger TV contracts. Why? Once the SEC started to sign those contracts, Dave, a lot of those lesser schools were able to shell out money to fix their facilities and their stadiums, which was Tennessee's biggest advantage in the 90s. And biggest case in point by the way, was LSU. People wonder why LSU was terrible before Nick Saban got there. That's because LSU never bothered to build a facility that was worth anything.
They also hired one goofball after another. So I'm going to say that's a little bit of both. But Mike the Tiger doesn't need to have a better facility than the football team does. Portions of the program brought to you by Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. They offer Michelin. All work is covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online at qualitytirepros.com. qualitytirepros.com. Stop by. Tell them Off the Hook Sports said hello. Say, hey, Bo, how are you? If there is a super conference, is Vanderbilt so embedded that they will be included, or do we look at this with all reality and boot them? Because I don't think anybody should be allowed in the super conference that can't realistically win it. There was a time in the NFL where this is before your time, but like in the 80s, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were like 0-16 and awful. That's not what you need. You need other teams that are going to compete, and I don't think that's Vanderbilt. So if you're going to do the super conference, I don't want to see 10 of those schools be easy wins. And you can see that from my perspective, Caleb, right? Because that's what I'm trying to avoid. You have a different argument altogether. I want to avoid the regular season duds.
Well, I think that this is where the relegation model could come in. Because here's what's going to happen. And here is the problem with revenue sharing. Now, the NFL has so many rules that you can't be cheap if you're an NFL owner. You actually have to spend the money on your team. But what you don't want, the problem that Vanderbilt has always brought is that they haven't bothered to invest in the football program or to try to be good. Is that fair to say? They haven't even bothered to try.
Well, yeah, my cousin's an orthopedic surgeon. He went to Vanderbilt. He could probably single-handedly change their athletic program if he really wanted to. I'm not exaggerating with the right donation, but they haven't done it to this point. What makes you think he would? And if I brought that up to him, he's a UT fan. He would laugh out loud, even though he went to Vanderbilt.
That's the point of the revenue sharing model. If you're not going to, and that's where you would actually, I mean, this is where Dave's more of a capitalist. He doesn't like the communist model of the NFL. That's why you don't like the revenue sharing. Your philosophy is
I think it's capitalist. It's just capitalist with a bunch of different locations. The NFL is one business, like a bank, with different locations on different street corners.
Okay, I guess technically that's not the case, but I see what you're going with that. But okay,
you and Jimmy, we'll have that argument for another day. Jimmy disagrees.
But the point is, yes, revenue sharing by its very nature is anti-capitalist. The whole NFL model is as communist as you can get. Okay, and so
let's be clear. I'm okay with revenue sharing, like TV money that comes into the conference, but don't tell me I got to give you $200 of Susie Jane's $1,000 tuition or anything.
Here's my revenue sharing fix, and here's how we'll do it. This is why relegation's important. You share in the revenue based on the level of play that you're at. However, if you don't spend and you start to lose and just collect the check, if you're in danger of relegation, that will incentivize you to actually invest in your program to be competitive. Because if you get relegated, make sure that people in the lower relegated leagues don't make the same money that the people in the elevated leagues do.
All right, I can roll with that. Let's go ahead and get to 4 downs as times have been announced for the upcoming football season, which is just right around the corner. Tennessee will play NC State at 7:30 on ABC. Will that be Nico's coming out party? What other games stand out that day the most? Is proof the SEC has done a pretty good deal with ESPN, and is it the biggest game of the day? Here we go. It is 4 downs, brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
Just initial thoughts. Cooper Mays is going to tell you what to do here momentarily, but first, Caleb Calhoun.
Coop here, first down.
What do you think of the 7:30 start on ABC? To me, that's a way to get fans very excited, nationally televised game. We're not bouncing around on an app looking for a UTEP or something crazy like that. This, to me, is a day full of partying, getting together. It's not the very first game of the season, but it kicks it off in September, and I think this could be, depending on what happens the rest of the month, a pretty neat day for Tennessee fans.
And for context, we're talking about the Tennessee NC State game at 7:30 p.m. in Charlotte. I think this is a great event, and it's funny because it's in Charlotte, but it's technically a neutral site. This is what I love about September college football. I think September college football games like this are much more about a weekend event than they are. They are about the game, but they're also about a weekend event and making a fun weekend out of it. I've always been a fan of this. I've always advocated for this. I've always said that they should be doing this. It's the second weekend. I prefer the first weekend with neutral site games around Labor Day where you can make a trip to a place. You know what I'm talking about, Dave? I've argued this. NASCAR does that Chase Cup, which drives me crazy, but I've always said that they should start the Chase Cup the weekend of Labor Day and have it in Atlanta the same week, or at that track outside of Atlanta, the one in Georgia, you know what I'm talking about? And also have the college football game of the week in Atlanta that day. So you could go to the NASCAR race, you could go to a college football game on Saturday and just make the best Labor Day weekend out of it possible. And I love neutral site events like that.
Yeah, and let's be honest, this neutral site, even though it's in North Carolina, Tennessee will probably win the fan ratio, and it's big for recruiting. I don't know why. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to ask it right now. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
What does NC State get out of this?
I think NC State.
Likely beat down in their recruiting territory. I just don't know why they scheduled it. And I would rather it be in Knoxville, as the poster said.
Yeah, I guess with NC State, they think they could. Maybe they made this deal when Tennessee was really bad, and they thought they could, in front of their fans, beat Tennessee.
Or unknown in the first year or two, Josh Heupel. I would have to go back and look. Have you seen a line for this number?
Yeah, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. It was like Tennessee. It was Tennessee 5.5.
Well, close,
and look, NC State is. Look, I'm going to tell you this, and here's the other part, and this is the part you're missing. They're jockeying right now. Conference realignment is happening very soon. We know the SEC wants North Carolina, but if they can't get North Carolina, NC State's second on their list, and NC State needs to really, really, really up their game if they're going to get into the SEC one day. But the SEC wants a North Carolina school, and NC State would love to be that North Carolina school.
They wouldn't get it over North Carolina, would they?
But there's a chance North Carolina could reject the SEC for the Big Ten.
Okay. Hit that like and subscribe button. Do that now if you haven't to this point. We greatly appreciate it. Coop, what do people need to do to be a bigger part of the program?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thanks, Coop. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Was that the right down? I'm confusing myself. Okay. Second down.
Help us out on the message board, guys. We lost track of downs.
What other games on that day stand out the most?
The games on the weekend of the Tennessee-NC State game?
Yes. Where will Tennessee be in the pecking order of publicity?
Okay, so Arkansas-Oklahoma State could be interesting if you have any faith whatsoever in Sam Pittman to make them competitive. But the most standout game, the most obvious standout game that's going to be Tennessee-NC State is Texas and Michigan. That's going to be the one that everybody's going to watch. And
so you're on that second tier, maybe number one on that second tier. Is that fair?
That is fair. Now, here's what's going to help. Texas and Michigan that's in Ann Arbor. And for those who don't know how TV contracts work, basically the home team, their TV contract gets the deal. So like, for instance, when the SEC had a contract with CBS, if an SEC team hosted a non-conference team, CBS could get first dibs on that game. You see what I'm saying? So that's how those typically work. The Big Ten, that game is not out yet, but the Big Ten, even with their new CBS deal, they place a high value on noon games. And guess what? Noon football is pretty awesome. I got to be honest with you guys. I love it. Big noon kickoff is great. I wish there was more of those. But Texas and Michigan, I think, would be a big noon kickoff, at which point Tennessee, NC State could still stand alone for the 7:30 matchup that night. Colorado, Nebraska is still going to be a competition as a game, though, so watch out for that. But overall, yes, Tennessee could be the standout sole game at 7:30 that everybody's watching.
All right, now something I know you want to get to is third down, Coop.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
By the way, I remind you, 4 Downs is brought to you by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Will this be Nico Iamaleava's breakout game for the Heisman? Will he be a true Heisman contender after this game? Stop by Dynasty Pools and Spas right off of I-75 in Athens and pick up a free Celebrate 98 book or Off the Hook Sports t-shirt just for stopping by and tell Scott we said hello. Is this the breakout party for Nico Iamaleava?
No, it could be. And I know I set it up. I set it up for you to ask the question because I was trying to create the excitement. But I'm going to respond and come back with it won't be the breakout game. It'll be a game that he plays very well in. It'll start to generate buzz. But I think it'll be like that Pittsburgh game in 2022 where I think Tennessee is still kind of figuring some things out. I think they're going to kind of win ugly. And you're going to come away from that game being like, man, they had like 5 opportunities to close the deal and they couldn't do it. They barely pulled it out in the end. I think it's going to be that type of NC State game. And it's kind of you breathe a sigh of relief. But Nico looks good. And then 2 weeks later is his breakout game when Tennessee plays Oklahoma. And Josh Heupel saves everything for Oklahoma and then unleashes on Oklahoma. And Nico's going to Put money on Nico hitting 6 touchdowns against Oklahoma. 6. I'm going for 6 touchdowns with Nico against Oklahoma.
Okay, now I know this is the ACC, okay, and that's why it was so hard to get a good feel for Iowa and how good they were. But I just wanted I want to mention they were the 3rd best in pass defense rating last year in the ACC, and I know it's the ACC, but they also have a young man coming in, Donovan Kaufman from Auburn, who had 37 tackles last year, 100 career tackles. So he should make that secondary even better. That has some experience coming back. Also brings a certain amount of unknown. All that being said, I hope you like the information. It's UTC. He's going to throw for 380 yards against UTC in week 1. I don't think it's going to take as long as you do for him to be the cat's meow and a very in vogue name in college football. I think that's going to happen after numero uno, 60 minutes.
No one's going to talk about the Tennessee UTC game, though. That's the thing. Tennessee fans will start to know he's special after that game.
Here's why I disagree with you. If this is, let's say, Nebraska back in the day with Tom Osborne as the head coach, they would beat you down 24-9, right? And then your quarterback wouldn't get any attention. But when they put up 60 and throw, and Nico, he accounts for 350 yards. It won't be more because they'll pull him. He's going to be one of the few exciting things to talk about in terms of great performances. I think that fans already want to like him. Don't you sense that fans want to like Nico? Even fans of other schools that just like watching good football. Don't you sense they want Nico to be successful?
I think the college football world does, because I think it's just so exciting. Nico being successful is good for college football. I just don't, there's the one thing I'll say this, the one thing working in your favor, and this is my biggest pet peeve of college football, is they never, ever, ever have marquee games on Labor Day weekend. I don't know why they do that. The NFL gives you the weekend. The NFL doesn't, the NFL could open Labor Day weekend if they wanted to. They choose not to.
You're probably too young to remember the preseason kickoff games. Do you remember those?
For the NFL?
No, they had preseason kickoff games in college. So Tennessee played in one in New Jersey. Guys, help me on the message board.
Oh, that's right. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, they did that, and they did.
They played Colorado.
Colorado.
That was the Eric Bieniemy game.
That was in Anaheim.
Yeah, and they played another one in New Jersey. They played 2 in a row.
In New Jersey in '87.
Okay, because Tennessee was so fast forward about get on TV. That was one of their major recruiting advantages. Not a recruiting advantage anymore. So I don't know why you have neutral site games anymore at all. I would want those people back at the University of Tennessee. I remind you,
particularly when Charlotte's not. Do you think this Duke's Mayo Classic is? Do you think they're paying out enough to offset what Tennessee can make making this a home game? There's no way, right? Like
I can tell you that about 20 years ago, about 18 years ago, Tennessee would clear a little over $1 million on a home game. So that's probably quadrupled by then. So I would have trouble thinking that Duke's Mayo is doling out that much mayonnaise.
Like the Chick-fil-A Bowl, the Chick-fil-A kickoff in Atlanta, they are doling out that money, right? They're doling out that type of money to get that neutral site game at the beginning of every year, I'm pretty sure. Or the one in Dallas?
Yeah, they're doling out some money. And that's a sexier game. I mean, they're going to be on TV. All you have to do is stop by Dynasty Pools and Spas, get a free Celebrate 98 book just by taking a look at their spas and telling our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas just off I-75 at Athens that we said hello. 4th down coming up, the premier game of the weekend, talking NC State right after this 60 seconds. The best thing about Dynasty Pools and Spas is that they've got it all taken care of. What does that mean? Well, you stop by their showroom and check out their fantastic selection of top-notch spas in that showroom in Athens. Make your pick and get ready, because Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers within 125 miles of that location in Athens, that fantastic showroom. They've got the cover lift, steps, chemicals, and everything you need. Delivery at no extra charge. They're just down the road in Athens. You pick the spa you want, and it'll be there for you. Oftentimes discounted with military and first responders discounts. Also blemish models, or just mention Off the Hook Sports. That's Off the Hook Sports for $500 off. There's a discount for you on spas made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas also has the best chemicals for you and your spa and your pool. No fillers, just the chemicals made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas, $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. Dynasty Pools and Spas, dynastypoolsandspas.com.
SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Could Tennessee survive a loss to NC State?
Yes, they could survive it more than they could to Oklahoma. And we talked about this yesterday, and I think the biggest reason is it could be one of those where they lose and everybody writes them off, and then they slowly but surely start winning every game after that. Toward the end of the season, everybody's like, well, that NC State loss was just Nico's second game. Not a big deal. I think they're fine now. It could be very much like the year Ohio State won the national title when they lost to an unranked Virginia Tech team by 2 touchdowns the second game. But everybody forgot about them. And then down the road, they're like, well, that was JT Barrett's first game. So, it's not a big deal. That I could see that.
Let's set that up as a poll question right now. Could Tennessee survive a loss to NC State? Something along the lines of
yes, long season.
NC State's good. You don't have a lot of characters there. I know that's a problem. By the way, there appears to be a mayonnaise debate going on. Derek's saying Duke's mayo doesn't use genetic modified cultured eggs in their mayonnaise. Is that a big deal to you, Caleb? It kind of is to me. It makes me interested. But I want to ask this, somebody with experience with Dukes, is it the sweet, like Cool Whip, or is it the mayonnaise, like good old-fashioned Kraft? 2 minutes, and we'll have the answer for you with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
All-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Couple things you need to know about what you may see on your screen if you are on one of our video platforms. That is, you need to join Hooker's Corner, and I'm going to put the link right up here because we have a major announcement that we're going to do right now, and you can join Hooker's Corner for just $9.98, or you can join for free. You won't get as much content, but you will still get the ability to win Rick's Great 8 Garmin Challenge. So if you join as free, now this doesn't open you up to all the Sports Treasures prizes, but if you just join as a free member and you are subscribed to the channel, once we hit 8,000 subscribers, and we're pushing at 5,000 right now. Bring yourself up, Caleb. I can get you back up. A Fallout Zone. Yes, he ended up at Memphis. Then you can win a Garmin watch worth over $1,000. So free members are eligible for Rick's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge, but you do need to be a paid member to be present, to be eligible for our good friend Sports Treasures and what they've been able to get us. And I think we're going to go with Zakai Ziegler autograph or baseball autograph. We're still working on that. I'll remind you that you got to follow them in Sports Treasures, because Sports Treasures has over 5 million Sports Treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. Daily updates, go to Sports Treasures TN. That's Sports Treasures TN, and you can follow them online. Again, you have to be a member to win the sports memorabilia and the weekly prizes, and that's just $9.98. You have to be a paid member, but if you want to take part in Rick's Great 8 Garmin Challenge, then we're going to get to 8,000 subscribers, and you're coming with us. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? Rick Terry Jewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. Also, if you're a paid member, once a month, we're giving away the Fire Opals. Your wife will love those. It's just $9.98 a month. So we have got to put a defensive back on the list of top 10 most important balls. But I think you would agree with me, Caleb, that we don't know much about Tennessee's defensive backs because they overhauled the entire unit and practice was closed. But from everyone I talked to, Ricky Gibson III is most likely to be your premier cornerback, which Tennessee hasn't had since Alontae Taylor. How important is it for Ricky Gibson to be a solid, if not spectacular, player for Tennessee? He comes in at number 6 on our list.
Ricky Gibson is crucial for Tennessee this year. So let's break down Tennessee's situation in the secondary. By the way, shout out to Jalen McCullough. He inked the deal with the Los Angeles Rams. I'm really glad he got an NFL deal. I think the unfortunate legal case against him held him back his last couple of years by an overzealous Knoxville DA who just wants to make her name famous, so she unfairly indicts Tennessee football players who should never have been indicted for anything. There, that was my spiel for a second. But vote her out, guys. So the Ricky Gibson III is the one real key returning player for Tennessee in the secondary. He started to show promise towards the end of last year. I missed the boat. He and Jordan Matthews came in together. They were both really promising cornerbacks that could develop. I thought Matthews would be the star over Gibson. That turned out to not be the case. Ricky Gibson was the one who developed down the stretch. Josh Heupel has gone for more experience everywhere else.
You say you. I was on board with you. We both thought it would be Jordan Matthews.
Yes, that is true. And Josh Heupel ran so many people off, and he brought in experience. He brought in Jalen McMurray from Temple. He brought in Jermon McCoy from Oregon State. He brought in Jacoby Thomas from MTSU. I think all of these guys are going to be in the secondary starting this year. And he also added Boo Carter, who is a freshman phenom. But Ricky Gibson is the one returning player who showed promise last year and showed talent and who is probably going to start this year. Tennessee needs him to be a lockdown corner on one side of the ball. They haven't had a lockdown corner since Alontae Taylor, honestly. And if they could get one, that would change so much of the dynamic of what they do everywhere else. And Ricky Gibson III, I think, has the potential to be that, which is why he made my list of most important Vols. Because as you know, Dave, a lockdown corner totally changes how you can scheme your defense, doesn't it?
Oh, listen, people say that the Dallas Cowboys didn't need Deion Sanders to win that third Super Bowl. They had to have him. Jimmy Holmes and I, who's brought to you by Ray Varner Ford, have argued about this. It changes the way your entire defense can play football. And I think that if you have a lockdown corner, which is difficult now, I don't know that there are many great lockdown corners like there used to be with Rivas and Dion and some of those other guys that I could go on and on and on about because of the rules of the game. But you still want the best of the best. And I will tell you this too, we may differ a little bit, but I'm okay if Ricky Gibson is a little bit of a gambler, because I think nowadays where more points are scored, you want a guy, you and I may differ on this, that gambles a little bit, which means he's going to give up some on the offensive side. And I know I'm thinking of a Dallas Cowboys cornerback, for instance, but you may not be. Do you think he needs to be a gambler, or do you think he needs to be just a consistent presence?
I actually agree with you. I wouldn't agree with you if he was playing for Iowa when you can't score at all. But I actually do think for Tennessee, yeah, it's worth gambling. It's worth gambling because that's probably your best chance of getting a stop. I mean, guys, people forget this, but an interception is kind of a big part of an interception is a big thing in football. Okay, that really changes the complexity of the game. So yeah, no, I'm fine with the gambling. Particularly, Jacoby Thomas is an experienced safety. If you put him behind Gibson, then I think you could have a little bit of help there. But yeah, no, I don't really see a problem with gambling. Now, I think given the way Tennessee runs its system, there's going to be a lot of scoring and a lot of offense. So I actually think that it's okay to bite in certain situations and bait in certain situations. And so, no, I'm with you with Ricky Gibson being a gambler. Totally. I think that's actually kind of the value that you want out of your cornerbacks playing for Tennessee.
Now, innately, though, let me ask you this. Does Tennessee, because they're so aggressive with the front seven, do they have to be a little bit less aggressive in the back end because they have to protect themselves? Because you're asking them to guard people for a long time if the pass rush doesn't get there. So do you need to be conservative on the back end if you're aggressive on the front? Brought to you by Don Self. State Farm, customer service still matters. For over 40 years, they have built their business on taking care of their customers. Go to donself.net, donself.net, 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126. Customer service still matters, donself.net. So I believe you need to be aggressive throughout. Now, that could get me down 21-0 in the first quarter, and I don't want to do that, but I would like to be aggressive and gamble throughout. We're not talking about across the board, Caleb. There are going to be certain coverages where you're going to play soft and off, but I think your all 11 need to be aggressive.
I don't think you have to play fully aggressive with all 11 if I want Ricky Gibson to be the gambler. I think you're going to be able to play soft coverage and have gambling cornerbacks because, look, the point of Tennessee's system is to get a lead and force into obvious passing downs. Well, if you force them into obvious passing downs, they're going to mostly run their dime packages, aren't they? They may not even run their nickel packages at that point. So you're going to have 6 DBs out there. You can have your cornerbacks gamble at that point. You got 4 other DBs. So I actually think that's where you could go with this. And you got James Pierce getting the pressure all the time. What you're talking about is the question I guess you asked is should you play a little softer with all the stunts and pressure practices you have for the front seven? That was the John Chavis philosophy, wasn't it? Play a soft zone coverage and just bring pressure after pressure after pressure with the front four or with the front seven.
They played a lot of man. They played a lot of man, but I think they would play soft man at times. But they played a whole lot of man. That was the whole dropping over your shoulder because you're looking at the receiver and not the ball. Do you remember that criticism used to come up with Tennessee's defensive backs under Larry Slade in the late 90s? Well, the reason was if you don't look at your man's going to run away from you. So, yeah. I mean, they played quite a bit of man, but they played some soft man.
Yeah. Yeah, it drove people crazy that they played so much soft man during that time. I remember that. I think you're going to be able to run a lot of, because your defensive line is so good, I think you'll be able to play a lot more soft coverage this year. And really, I mean, you can drop your linebackers into soft coverage a good bit too. But I think most of the time, Keenan Peely may be the only linebacker that's out on the field, which we'll get to him as an important player in the future. But this is where you can allow your cornerbacks to be playmakers, particularly Gibson, who is an athlete.
Okay, don't give anything away, but give me Are there any other underclassmen on the list that you want to tease? The show represented by Banks and Jones, because Ricky's just been here for what, about 18 months? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. So as we count down the 10 most important Vols, Ricky Gibson comes in at number 6. Is there another underclassman on the list? Don't give it away.
I mean, there's a very obvious underclassman if you're talking about people who are freshmen and sophomores. Kind of a really, really, really obvious one, guys. Go ahead and guess who that is.
Does he like to throw the ball a lot?
He likes to throw the ball. He likes to get
Does he play volleyball at all?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, very.
Will
talented.
he be number 1? We'll see. You'll have to keep tuning in day to day as we count them down. Yeah, that's right. So where are we to this point in the countdown of the top 10 most important balls headed into summer workouts? Give us a countdown.
Halfway through, we had Javonte Spraggins, John Campbell Jr., Amari Thomas, Brew McCoy, and now we have had Ricky Gibson III. Yeah. We love those trenches, don't we? Started with those linemen.
We do. We're kind of simple like that.
And guys, by the way, by the time the season starts, Dave will stop saying Amari Hand. I can promise you. He'll stop living in 2002. No, I'm calling him out. He accidentally said it in our phone call this morning, guys.
3:45 a.m. production meeting. Dylan says, go ahead and say boo Carter, Caleb. We know you want to. Okay, Dylan, I'm going to give you a little hint or a little insight. Carter didn't go on the list because as much as I think he'll be a starter, I don't think he's, air quotes, important this year to be a starter. I think he's either good enough where he becomes a starter and then you're happy with that. It's hard for a freshman to make these lists for me. Or I think somebody else steps in that position as a placeholder till he's ready. That's why I didn't have him on the list. Does that make sense?
Yes, and let me give you guys a perfect example. The 2007 Tennessee team, you know, the one that won the East that would have won the SEC title if they didn't make the most predictable throw on a curl route of all time that LSU jumped to win?
Yes.
That team did have Eric Berry, and he was a freshman All-American. But Dave, Eric Berry wasn't nearly as important as Gerard Mayo to that team, or as Rico McCoy to that team, or as Dan Williams to that team. Those were all 3 more important defenders than Eric Berry on that team, weren't they?
No.
And then on the offensive side,
there. I think Eric Berry was the guy that offensive coordinator's worried about. He started like his second game, didn't he?
He should have started his first, but that's a different story. But no, I still think I think the front 4 with Dan Williams and Robert Ayers was a bigger deal. And I think Gerard Mayo was the most important player on that team defensively. And then offensively, you had Eric Ainge and Brad Cottom when he came back healthy to the end, had the best second half of the season I think I've ever seen a tight end had. If Brad Cottom had played the whole year, he probably would have set every tight end record beyond Jason Witten. And then, you had Lucas Taylor standing out. Whatever you want to think about him, Arian Foster was very important to that team in 2007. I mean, there were guys that were more important than Eric Berry. And he would not have made your top 10 list going into the year.
There wasn't anybody except for the quarterback. He would have been number 2 to the quarterback.
You would not have put him number 2 on your list going into the year.
Wait, was that his freshman year or sophomore?
I'm talking about his freshman year. Yeah.
Oh, well, I might have done like an honorable mention or had him at number 10 because I did think that's the last guy. It's funny you bring that up, that I'm like, is a sure bet. Because Nico, I believe, if anybody watches the show, please hit like and subscribe now. I'm telling you that I believe in Nico 110%. That was the last guy, Eric Berry, that I believed. And it's funny you bring his name up, that I believed in as much as I do Nico Iamaleava.
And curiously, was that
a compliment?
Did you think that when Tennessee landed Eric Berry, or was that when you were covering the practices at the time? Was it based on what you saw him doing in practice?
No, I went down to Atlanta with Fred White. We kind of broke him down. So
Oh,
no,
that's
I
well done.
thought he was going to be really good. I thought he could easily play quarterback at a lower level if you wanted him to. Now, you got to run a lot. I mean, we didn't have the best arm. He's just one of the greatest athletes and greatest men that I've ever been around. And I would say Josh Heupel is a great man, but CBS says stick it.
Say wham.
What? Let's go ahead and get to it. It is what the H?
What the? What was he thinking? Release the hounds. The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
CBS likes to rank coaches. Caleb Calhoun, what was Josh Heupel last year? What is he this year? And what was the change? Please hit like and subscribe.
Josh Heupel, guys, fell. He
Fell.
fell from number 16 to number 23 among coach rankings. That's right. He fell from number 16 to number 23 among Power 5, which is now Power 4 coach rankings.
Okay. Now let's start with number 16. What did you think of that number after the 2022 season?
I thought it was significantly underrated after the 2022 season. I'm going to be honest.
I do too. And the reason I was asking that, I believe that you and I are going to be of the same mindset, and that is this should be a pretty fluid list. Guys should be able to go up and down this list based off what they've done. All right. Josh is now 23rd. Are there 22 coaches in college football better than him?
Well, let's just go with the SEC coaches ahead of him. Want to do that real quick?
Let's do that real quick.
All right. Kirby Smart.
Okay.
Josh Heupel. We have Brian Kelly. I think there's some questions about Brian Kelly with LSU at this point, more than I had last year, but better than Josh Heupel at this point, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Steve Sarkisian did just make the playoff. I couldn't complain about him being ahead of Josh Heupel. Kalen DeBoer, can't complain. Just made the playoff. Even though I may disagree, I can't complain. Now, here's where 3 get sketchy. Lane Kiffin at number 14. Would you rather have Josh Heupel? You taking Heupel or Kiffin right now?
Well, given the issues that have occurred off the field, I would take Heupel. But are they taking that into account?
I guess. I'm not totally sure. I think they're just taking it, what you can do. Now, here's the 2 that may make people's heads explode. Mark Stoops at number 20, even though Heupel's never lost to Stoops.
Hard for me to swallow that. You?
And guys, get ready for Dave's head to just explode out of the building. Because by telling Dave this person, I'm just going to have to say I'm standing on business.
Oh, Eli's better than... Okay, would anybody take Eli Drinkwitz over Josh Heupel? Missouri fans, are you out there? Something.
You don't stand on business, Dave?
Stand on business, Josh. No, I'm
The
not
whole Drinkwitz.
No, I'm not going to do that. Who else is on that list? That to me is officially the most absurd one.
They're basing it off last year, them going 11-2. So those are the coaches that are from the SEC.
But you can't just base it off 1 year.
They admit there's recency bias to this. So the coaches not in the SEC ahead of them, Ryan Day, Dabo Swinney. How Ryan Day is ahead of Dabo Swinney is driving me bonkers. Who in the world thinks Ryan Day should be ahead of Dabo Swinney in terms of a head coach?
No, I don't see how you could say that. There's 2 national championships. You can say all the recency biases you want to, but he's got 2 national championships.
He's got 2 national championships at a program that's that's barely a top 25 program of all time, right? And Ryan Day has 0 at a top 5 program of all time.
No, exactly. And pardon my typo, but the poll question is up now. The last one, can Tennessee survive a loss to NC State? No, you can't lose to ACC teams. Yes, long season, NC State is good. 78% said no, you cannot lose to NC State, that they can't survive a loss to NC State. Now, Josh Heupel, 23rd among coaches by CBS, is ludicrous. Okay, correct. Pardon the typo. Too high. Where would you fall among those 4 choices?
I think it's ludicrous. But I let's break down what they're basing this off of, because let's break down what actually happened.
Can I interject for a second? I'm going to say it's okay, because I don't think Josh Heupel had a good year last year. I think when he looks back at 2023, he'll say, I made my most mistakes that year.
See, this is where I'm going to break with you, and I've consistently broken.
Okay.
I never had a problem with Josh Heupel's play calling last year. Nothing about what I thought made Josh Heupel a great coach changed last year.
Well, you didn't like the way he utilized his personnel. I know you didn't like that.
That's where I'm going. There are 2 red flags about Heupel last year. If that's what dropped him, fair, but one of those red flags was there 2 years ago. The first red flag, you guys know where I'm going, talent evaluation. I think that's a question about Heupel. That was a question last year, but that should have been a question 2 years ago, because this red flag existed to me the second he named Joe Milton the starter over Hendon Hooker in 2021. I've had no faith in his talent evaluation since then, and there's been nothing to prove that it's gotten better. So I don't know how you learn that.
Now wait, he's hit on a lot of guys.
Has he? Has he? Are we sure about that? He hit on James Pierce, but did he recruit James Pierce really?
He's hit on a good number of guys. I have concerns as well, but I think you may have been overstating it just a little bit.
I think
I'm not even going to say the Joe M words, because I get ripped for telling you the truth about 10 months ago. So I'm not going to say anything.
But let's break. He dropped in 2023 because of his original sin, which was going to get Joe Milton in 2021. Now, there was a red flag that emerged last year, Dave, and I'm going to tell you, there is one red flag that emerged last year that we didn't know about before. I knew about his talent evaluation issue. You know what the other red flag is now?
I would go with halftime adjustments.
Actually, that's another red flag. Funny enough. Okay, maybe. But
everybody has red flags. It's not like we're trashing the guy.
Here's a gigantic one. I'm starting to question conditioning. Is the conditioning program where it should be? There were so many injuries last year, and they mishandled the Cooper Mays injury.
Okay, that was mishandled. They should have had surgery earlier in the summer. I agree with you there. That's coming from other people. Nothing that Cooper has told me. I want to be really clear, but that's just my opinion. The other injuries, if you want to talk about Brew, Tillman, I'm trying to comment. I don't see a lot of popped hamstrings. I mean, to me, if you're going to break a leg, you're going to break a leg. Sorry, Brew. I think. What's that?
Well, I mean, Keenan Peely tore a muscle. That just doesn't seem. That seems like a conditioning issue.
Okay, Keenan Peely's tricep tear. That's a concern, but it's not to the point where I would be overly concerned just yet. If it happened again next year, I mean, it didn't happen in 2022. They stayed remarkably healthy. If you remember,
were they lucky or were they well conditioned?
Well, were they unlucky or poorly conditioned last year?
That's the question. That is a real question, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the budgetary things that we were talking about earlier. If Tennessee needs to go out and hire a better strength and conditioning coach or up that part of the program, they're able to do it financially. Colton says, are we sure it wasn't Peely's age? Yes. Perhaps he was suffering from a severe bout of arthritis.
I mean, okay.
Wait, wow. You don't like that? The arthritis?
I get it. Oh my gosh. Age shaming over here. And I'm the young one, and I don't like to age shame.
Hooker didn't pop a hammy, by the way. Hendon Hooker didn't pop a hammy. But again, that's a ligament tear. I don't think that is, based off my history, I don't think that's indicative of poor strength and conditioning.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker's was a freak injury. That's not from Hendon Hooker's not one that I would worry too much about. You got me too with halftime adjustments and being on the road. Those are starting to stand out as real concerns. That South Carolina game is looking, we have to say this, Steve. We have to say this, and a lot of people don't want to admit this, but the South Carolina game from 2022, it's looking less and less like a one-off.
I disagree.
It's looking like a trend.
I disagree. I think it's a one-off because of the fashion in which Tennessee has lost its other games. Florida didn't have Cooper Mays in 2023. Last year, Missouri does something really crazy defensively. However, that comes back to halftime adjustments. That's when they should have been able to adjust.
How many times?
Alabama was obvious they did a better job of of halftime adjustments.
How many times, though, are we going to point to exterior factors before we say, well, these factors shouldn't have been factors? Look, you bring up the Cooper Mays thing, and I agree with you with the Cooper Mays thing. That was an issue, but that Florida team was bad. Tennessee should have beaten Florida without Cooper Mays. It shouldn't have mattered. That game should not have mattered. I mean, his injury should not have mattered in that game.
I think Tennessee's depth was still that bad. I thought about you talking about that yesterday, and I mulled over it
I
a
don't
little
think
bit.
Florida was any better than Virginia, and Tennessee blew out Virginia.
Fair.
I think being on the road made it different.
Wasn't a good coaching day. They got beat all around. Cole Cubelic from ESPN scheduled to join us here momentarily. Hang with us. How about 2 minutes? And we are back with Florida landing a big-time prospect. I thought the Gators were just choking on their own NIL trouble. Should you be worried about Florida? And Cole Cubelic scheduled to join us. Talk about Tennessee's offensive line. Don't get anybody hurt.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Experience it all at Varner Ford in Clinton. Need a quick fix or maintenance? Visit our Quick Lane Tire and Auto Center. Keep your Ford running smoothly with the experts in our service department. Ready for your next Ford? Our sales team is here to guide you to this 24 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Local you trust, experience you can afford. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All righty here. Let's get a poll check. Sounds weird. Where are we on our 2 polls that we have thrown out so far this show? We did a couple of things that I think you'd be interested in.
So we've already lost the results of the original poll question. It's already gone. But the current poll question is Josh Heupel is Josh Heupel is 23rd among coaches by CBS. Is ludicrous, okay, correct, too high? 52% said ludicrous, 33% said okay, 5% said correct, and 10% said too high. Can I tell you something really sad, Dave?
I'm ready for something, well, not too terribly sad. Let's try to keep it on an up note.
I knew of Ludacris the rapper before I knew what the word ludicrous meant.
That is sad.
But I was 11 when Ludacris came out.
Incredibly sad. Did you look it up?
Well, unfortunately, Ludacris spells his name different from the actual phrase word ludicrous. So
great. So let me ask you this. Where would you have put Josh Heupel? We just talked about how he went from 16 to 23 in the preseason rankings by CBS.
I'm going to save that because I'm going to be doing my own coach rankings soon enough. So
okay,
I am because my official rankings are better than anybody else's rankings, because it is my opinion. As Steve Harvey said in a stand-up one time, these are my opinions, therefore they're the right ones.
No question in my mind. I can totally roll with that. All you have to do is stop by Dynasty Pools and Spas, and you can pick up an awesome Off the Hook Sports t-shirt, or you also can pick up a Celebrate 98 book. Florida is suddenly recruiting well. What does this say about the Gators and NIL? Get us up to date, Caleb.
Yeah, so Florida shocked the world and landed Colorado Buffalo's transfer, Cormani McLean. He was once a 5-star cornerback in the class of 2023, had committed to Colorado, transferred out. According to CBS and 247 Sports expert Jacob Rudner reports that he could arrive on campus even as a walk-on, because the Gators have all 85 scholarships filled. So if he's going to arrive as a walk-on, that makes it very obvious that this is an NIL pickup, right?
Sure.
This comes a year after Florida, 1 year later after Florida landed top-notch quarterback recruit Jaden Rashada based on NIL, but then had to send him to the curb when it sent him to Arizona State because they didn't have the money to pay what they promised him. Nailing a Colorado transfer like this from Dion with NIL money alone and getting him to come as a walk-on, I'm going to lay 3 options out for you, Dave, and you tell me which one is more likely.
Okay.
Does Florida have its NIL together? Is Cormani McLean desperate because Colorado said that he had that he was a problem teammate and that he had off-field issues and that Deion Sanders called out his work ethic? This was all beforehand. So is this basically he just couldn't go anywhere else because he's from Florida and there's too many red flags about him? Actually, those are really the only 2 options. No, those are the 2 options. Were there too many red flags on him and that's why Colorado let him go anyway? Or does Florida have its NIL act together?
Well, you have to be pretty far down the totem pole for Colorado to turn you away, don't you, as they try to build a program? But I think it's as simple as that. I just haven't heard anything from my Florida sources to indicate that they are getting on better ground NIL-wise by SEC standards. I'm not saying they weren't better than they were yesterday or last month or last year. They're getting better, but how much better, how much more quickly? That's the question that you have, Caleb. And you can't just get a little bit better in the SEC and expect to win big-time battles for transfer guys if you're just going to just slightly get better. They got to make more of an impact than me. This isn't that big of a hit. Dylan points out a lot of schools passed on McLean. That's what I was told too.
Yeah, it sounds like Florida and McLean were both desperate, and that's where this marriage came. Sounds like McLean desperately needed a place to go. Florida desperately needs talent. It gives off I'd love to bring this one up. It gives off Brent Schaefer Ole Miss vibes, Dave.
It does. It does. And remind those that are too young that don't remember what happened there. A former Tennessee ball went to Ole Miss, and suddenly there was a song about him.
Yes. So basically what happened, Brent Schaefer was in competition with Eric Ainge as the starter. Eric Ainge started to separate himself. They both got hurt at the end of the season. Brent Schaefer became a total head case, had so many off-field issues. Fulmer dismissed him from the team. He went to junior college, lit it up. But when he went to come to kind of a Cam Newton type of thing, right? Dismissed from a team, goes to junior college, lights it up, is ready to come back into the SEC. But there wasn't really a bidding war to get him at that time. And I don't mean bidding like NAL. I mean, people weren't lining up to get him because there were so many off-field issues. There were so many red flags that people didn't want him. Ed Orgeron takes the job at Ole Miss, thought he was going to get Lane Kiffin as offensive coordinator, couldn't get him. So Ed Orgeron is scrambling, doesn't know what to do, and he's desperate for somebody to get a spark into the program. So he just immediately he willingly takes Brent Schaefer. And he names Brent Schaefer the starter before Brent Schaefer could even academically qualify to get into Ole Miss. And that wrecked Orgeron's whole tenure at Ole Miss, quite honestly.
Well, it did. It was a terrible start. It also didn't help that he showed up to one of the first team meetings and he was he had his shirt off and threatened to fight any of the seniors who thought they could take him. That wasn't a good idea. A lot of bad things you can do early on as it goes.
That's exactly what you want out of your quarterback, right?
He really did do that. He ripped his shirt off. And
Was that at Tennessee or Ole Miss?
That was at Ole Miss. You think you take me? Come on.
Oh,
I'll take
Orgeron
it.
did that.
Yeah, whoever's ready. Let's go. Get out of here. Yeah, that's a true story. That really happened. I know somebody that was actually in the room when that happened. But getting back to Florida, to me, it's going to take a solid class of transfers, like 6 to 8 guys that you got at a reasonable rate that don't have red flags in their past for me to think that they are a formidable foe on the transfer trail. I just don't see that. I don't see Florida under Billy Napier being competitive. I don't think he gets it. I just don't think he understands the transfer portal. I don't think Florida understands the transfer portal. I think they've got the snobbishness that we thought Alabama might have. They believe you should just come to Florida because there's the state school. Alabama thought you should take a discount. Why? Because you'd be playing in the NFL and you'd be winning championships. I'm not sure why Florida thinks they should get a discount, but it feels like they think they should get a discount. Am I wrong?
No, it does. As a matter of fact, I think Florida thinks that they're a selling point with just being in Florida, but I think there's a problem people miss with that, which is that Gainesville's, if you're picking a place, if you're one of those people that wants to move to Florida for the weather and the sunshine and all that, Gainesville ain't the place. I mean, Gainesville is not on the beach, so it's just a miserably hot place. Dave, I think you and I both agree. Is Gainesville not one of the most miserably hot places you've ever been? And I don't mean like beach weather.
Yes. Can't wait to get out of there every time I go. Same thing for Orlando. As far as Disney World, they could shut the thing down and I'd have no problem with it right now.
So if the university was in Tampa, they could sell it better, or in St. Petersburg. But they're trying to sell Gainesville. I'm sorry. Florida's a beautiful state. Gainesville's a really crappy place in a beautiful state.
Elias points this out, and tell me if this isn't wrong. Ferentz shot up 10 spots for 10 wins in a weak division. Heupel drops 6 spots for 9 wins in a tough division, and he beat Ferentz handily. That seems like a hole in the rankings. Is that
there's
true?
There's a lot of relativism in those Heupel rankings. You have to remember that I think they think that what you can do at Iowa is very is very limited. I think that's one of the reasons he shot up so high. It's hard to. He's led a consistent program. Maybe Matt Rule will prove me wrong, but in this day and age, with everybody catching up in conditioning and without the steroids, I don't know what those schools in corn country can do. Iowa or Nebraska. I just don't know what they can do. Yeah, but that's the thing. If you don't want to do steroids, how are you going to win? I mean,
who doesn't want to do steroids? Portions of the program brought to you by Boundless Moving. From the 2-hour minimum to turnkey operations, they've got you covered. Boundless Moving in East Tennessee and Boundless Moving in Charlotte. You'll love them. Boundless Moving. Also want to thank our friends at Apex Apparel Group Design. They are incredibly awesome. If you call Tyler right down below at 865-919-3001 for your company, you can get 15% off your first order. We're talking about not just clothes, but design, brand, and market your way. Unique products to promote your business with unparalleled customer service. That is Apex Apparel's Group Design. If I just threw out, again, call Tyler, 865-919-3001. 919-3001. It's down below. Call Tyler. Tell him Off the Hook Sports sent you. If I just threw out there that Tennessee could have 2 nagging injuries to 2 of its offensive linemen, or a fairly significant injury, not a season-ending injury, a 2 or 3 game type of injury to Nico, which do you think most people would immediately jump on? It's the 2 or 3 games missed by Nico, right? Wouldn't you think that would be it?
That you would rather not have happen? Nico missed 2 games?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you'd rather Nico not miss 2 games.
Okay. Let's go to this guy right here. who's nice enough to join us. Cole Cubelic went everywhere. He's all over the World Wide Web now. He's at WJOX in the morning, so he's nice enough to join us afterwards. And he did a fantastic video on Tennessee. Cole, tell me about how people can access your own personal stuff, because I've said it for a long time. You're as good of a guy that can break down football as anybody that I've been around or seen.
Well, I appreciate that. Podcast is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or you can go to YouTube and get it. Just search Cube Show, CUBE Show, and we do a weekly show. During the season, we break down film of all the SEC games. In the off season, we try to change it up a little bit. We're doing some spring reviews for every team, and Tennessee was this past week. So I feel pretty good about the team, and it's kind of what we talked about in the video. So I think there's a lot of reason for optimism.
Yeah, and to clarify, you're going off a lot of spring practice, or at least some spring practice video you see, correct?
Some of the spring games, some of things I've seen, some of things that some people that I've talked to, information that I've been able to gather. So I try to talk to folks that I know that know the team, that are around it, that are close to it, and then I'm able to see certain things with certain teams. Then obviously, I always think you can get a little bit more from spring games than people think. You always hear people say, "Oh, it's a spring game. You can't get anything. You can't learn anything." I really disagree with that. I don't think that you can learn a lot about the team collectively when you watch a spring game, but I don't really have a lot of question marks about a lot of teams collectively. I need to know about certain position groups, certain individuals, how they're going to fit in as either a role player or as a starter, or where they're going to play, or what they're going to be able to do. Like, I'll give you an example. Like Blake Shapen, quarterback at Mississippi State. There wasn't a ton that you could take away from collectively, because you say, oh, it's a spring game. They're only running certain coverages, or they're not pressuring. But I wanted to see him operate the offense. I wanted to see how he got the ball in and out of the mesh. I wanted to see the timing of when he got rid of the football, his comfort level in the pocket, if he decided to throw the ball away. And I thought there was a big difference when you saw his backup, Chris Roberts, come in, and all of a sudden he's running around scrambling, trying to get away, and he just didn't look near as comfortable. So I think there are certain things like that you can learn from certain teams.
I don't want to stereotype you, but you played offensive line for Auburn, for those that don't know, maybe a little bit younger than us, and you addressed the offensive line from the get, and you think they're pretty good, right? But definitely not deep.
Have a chance to be one of the better groups in the SEC. Obviously, John Campbell is one of the better tackles in all college football coming back. He has a chance to be the best tackle in the SEC next year. He'll most likely flip over to the right side. Lance Hurd, we've seen him at LSU, not a ton, but we've seen a little bit of him. I think fundamentally he's got a ways to go, but he's got all the ability in the world in a monster frame that could be a guy that, from a power perspective, adds a little bit more. Maybe can give you, what you had there at tackle a couple of years ago with the top 10 pick. If Mays is healthy at center, he's one of the better centers in the SEC. I think he's a must-have, though, kind of like John Campbell and maybe Lance Hurd. And Javonte Spraggins has played a ton of football. Now, he needs to cut down on the penalties a little bit, but I love his attitude. I love his demeanor. I love the way he plays the game. I think you've got some options at the opposite guard. Maybe a Dane Davis could slide down. Maybe Andre Carrick could end up being that guy. But you've got four solidified guys that I think I know where they're going to be and how they're going to operate. And it gives me a lot of confidence in that group. And I do think there's a little more depth. It's just not a lot of depth in the right places. I think tackle, probably a little bit of a concern, and center definitely a concern of, if you were to lose one of those guys, depending on which one, especially at tackle, it could hurt.
Yep, agreed.
So Cole, you brought up Spraggins, and we spoke last year at SEC Media Days, and I think one of the underrated parts of Tennessee's offense in 2022 was that blocking duo of Cooper Mays and Javonte Spraggins, which really sparked the run game, which is why Josh Heupel's offense was able to create so many of those big passing plays. Javonte Spraggins got hurt last year. How big of a deal is that? The most underrated part of Tennessee's offense, that Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins duo on the right side?
No, I would say probably just having Mays, because he directs all the traffic. He understands mentally how to handle everything, and physically he's a gifted football player. And so to be able to handle the snaps in an offense like that, be able to you got to make the calls quick in that offense. You don't have a lot of time just sitting there able to survey things and get people lined up and orchestrate everything. He can manage that very well. So he's probably as valuable of a piece to the offense as anybody other than Nico, just because of how much is on him every snap, every series. I think that year, Darnell Wright was a pretty big piece of why they were able to move people around and do some different things. The offense is going to have advantages running the football just because of what they do to your numbers game. They're going to have those receiver splits out wide. They're going to challenge you out wide, and you have to make decisions. I've talked to coordinators in this league about that. They have to decide, am I going to keep more numbers out on the perimeter to help in coverage and to help tackle in space, or do I need more guys near the tackle box to be able to assist against the run game? It's not an easy decision to make for a lot of defenses because of where you're more talented or where you have more experienced players. And, the key to it all is that tight end position also. That's probably the part of it that nobody talks about, that when it's going and they get that insert blocker or they get a guy on the outside that can help double teams with offensive tackles, or they can run split zone and bring him flat across the line of scrimmage. And I think they've got a good group of tight ends there. One young one that I know they're really excited about. When that group's going, that's when things can really kind of excel to the next level, specifically in the run game.
I assume you're talking about Ethan Davis.
Correct.
A guy who played basketball who I know they really, really like and his potential and his athleticism. I will get attacked by the keyboard commandos if I don't ask you what you think about Nico.
I think he has all the ability to be a big-time quarterback in the SEC. From what I've seen, and it's been a very limited amount, I like his demeanor. I do think that the leadership and being a little bit more vocal is something that there was an emphasis on in spring. Not that that's something that has to go a long way, but you want your quarterback to be able to sort of command the offense that way. He can make all the throws. He's got a great arm. I think he's got a good touch and feel, which a lot of younger quarterbacks just don't have, especially quarterbacks that have a big arm. I mean, Tennessee fans were pretty familiar with that part of a game maybe not being where it needs to be last year. I like the mobility that he can add with his legs. I don't know if you want to live there because you don't want to put him in harm's way as much. I mean, think about what Hendon Hooker did. I mean, he was able to break people down with his legs, but you don't want him to have to exit and bring in your backup. I think there's a significant drop-off when he's out, and that's what kind of concerns me about this team. It's not just Nico, and that's almost every team. If you lose a quarterback, it's going to be a massive drop-off to whoever's next. But I think center, tailback, maybe tackle, those are positions that I just don't think this team can afford to lose this year. If they stay healthy at those spots, I think they're going to have a real chance to be one of the better offenses in the league. I think Nico could be special. I mean, it's just you got to get reps. You have to have experience, and it's hard to really say exactly what you think a guy can be until you see more of it. But he's got a big-time group of receivers. I love the Chris Brazzell kid from Tulane. I think he's going to be a monster. It sounds like some of the fairy tales of Dante Thornton are a little bit more real right now than they were at any point last year because he wasn't healthy. We got a good tight end room, as we've mentioned. I do think after Dylan Sampson, I'm not sure that you're going to be as close to the same, but possibly. We just wait and see. But he's got everything around him to go be a big-time SEC quarterback, and I think he has the talent as well to be able to pull that off.
Hey, Caleb, I want you to jump in here, but Cole, if you can, tell us again about all that you're doing and how people can access your work, because I love it. The X's and O stuff is great.
I appreciate it. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning is 7 to 10 a.m. weekdays, jocksfm.com, or you can get the Jocks app, search WJOX. And then Cube Show podcast, we just did Tennessee, YouTube, at Cube Show on all your social media. Search Cube Show on iTunes.
I think we're losing Cole. I think he's going in a bad cell.
That's all.
I think we got the good stuff though, Caleb. You want to try to
I
bring
do
him
want
back?
a blank.
I think
And
we're losing his cell
let's
altogether.
see. Yeah, I think we're losing him. Cole, we're having trouble. You still with us?
Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
we got him back.
Yeah.
That's fine. We got everything you said. Just give me your thoughts on Tennessee defensively, and we'll let you run out of here.
One of the better D lines in the league. They should be. I mean, Tennessee's probably in better shape as far as defensive tackle depth than any other team in the SEC. And that's saying something, because we saw what it was like in the portal with different teams, not just in the SEC, but nationally, chasing defensive tackles. I think they're going to be solid there. Got to stay healthy at linebacker. I think they need Keenan Peely to be healthy. But I think if he is healthy, that has a chance with him and Aaron Carr to be a pretty good group. I have some questions and concerns about the secondary. I don't think they're going to be as young as last year, but if you've got the best pass rusher in the league coming off the edge, which Tennessee may have, that's going to take a mighty load off of whoever's playing corner, safety, nickel. And so Tennessee should have that with, I think what right now you probably say the best pass rusher in the Southeastern Conference coming off the edge.
Agreed. Hey, can I ask you just a random question? Have you heard anything about Bison Lang? And then go ahead. Sorry.
No, not a ton. I don't have a lot on him, to be honest with you.
That works. The backup center behind Cooper. Go ahead, Caleb.
So, Cole, I want to ask you a little bit on the SEC as a whole, because as you know, I think the most low-key underrated hire in college football this year was Jeff Lebby to Mississippi State, who was Josh Heupel's offensive coordinator at UCF in 2018. How much more common do you think the Josh Heupel offense is about to get with the wide splits, realizing that teams have to commit if they do that?
Yeah, I think it's the tempo that you have to almost overcommit to, because what people don't understand is it's not just saying, okay, we're going to snap the ball fast on this next play. How you line up, where you line up, how to go to where the football is going to be spotted, what official to give the football to. Like, those are fundamentals of that pace and that tempo that are not easily learned. They spend a lot of practice time on it. They spend a lot of time initially when you get in installing it on just how to operate it. And then when new guys come in, they have to spend a lot of extra time on how to do it. And that's why Mays at center, I think, is such a big piece for this Tennessee team if they're going to be successful. So that's the part that I think takes almost more dedication. But you're going to see bits and pieces of it everywhere. Like Lane uses pieces of it, but he doesn't necessarily run that offense. Being around Kendall Browse at FAU and some of the stuff that they put in. You mentioned Lebby with him at Ole Miss also. I think you'll probably see more people utilizing certain aspects of it than they will just dedicating themselves to running that offense that way.
Cole, I know you got stuff to get to, man. We appreciate you working us in. People need to check you out again on YouTube. So thank you so much, sir. Football season's almost here. Have a blessed day.
I appreciate you guys having me, and looking forward to it. I will say I need a little break before, but it's going to be fun when it gets here.
Yeah, I'm disappearing for about 10 days here before long go, but be blessed, sir.
All right, thanks, guys.
Hey, I'm not joking whatsoever. That group, Tom Hart, they could do the Super Bowl tomorrow, and I don't think it would stand out as like, what are these guys doing here? I think that's the best play-by-play group in the biz.
Yeah, I mean, Cole Cubelic should be actually on nationally televised games. He breaks down parts of teams that I never even think of in ways, but he does it in a way, not in a he does it in a way that I think a lot of times fans can understand. I'm going to say rest in peace. John Madden can never perfect that. He would go from saying the most simplistic, obvious thing to bringing it down in such a technical way that you could never really understand what he was talking about sometimes.
But that was his goal. I remember being at some speaking engagement he had, and he said he wanted to talk to the dad who had a higher level of understanding, and he wanted to talk to the little girl who's 5 years old and just understands it's the Cowboys Steelers. So maybe that didn't work, but he did all right.
The hard part is talking to the little girl who's 5 years old to help her understand the technical side of it. That's how it's hard to make that transition. By the way, this is a problem with academia now, where they write these papers, whether you're in history, humanities, or whatever, you write these papers that you just present to other people in academia, and you write it in a way that only you guys all understand it, and then they get frustrated that the rest of the country doesn't understand it. I'm like, well, you need to write it in a way that the rest of the country can process it.
You know what Cole said that was super cool too? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but what Cole said was super cool too. You know how Bob Osborne had to teach the triple option?
Tom Osborne, right?
Tom Osborne, yeah. What did I say?
You said Bob. Who the heck is Bob? Well, Bob Devaney, who was before Tom Osborne.
Bob Osborne is one of our regular posters. Tom Osborne, anyway. Tom Osborne, you'd say, hey, why don't you just copy that triple option? Because he knew how to teach it. So did you hear what Cole said about when it comes to getting the ball spotted, handing it to the right official? Those little things that we don't think about, Josh Heupel knows how to coach it. So I thought your point was very good. Could you see other people copy it? Yeah, they might copy it, but they're not going to be able to do so via film or tape. And if I'm Josh Heupel, I'm not taking in a bunch of small school visitors because I don't want that stuff getting out. You know, that used to be something that was very common. Tennessee would have smaller schools or even semi-big schools come in and they'd study other schools. If I'm Josh Heupel, I'm being as secretive as he's been, and it's been really secretive.
It has. I just feel like an offensive system can't stay secretive for long. I mean, it's that That was the problem, because you're right, with the triple option, that was run everywhere else. The reason Tom Osborne was successful, I'm going to keep saying it, there was a conditioning program that was very special at Nebraska, and they had some very intriguing conditioning.
Well, you know how it breaks up and how it gets out. It's not the kids, it's not the players, it's the coaches. It's Alex
Golesh gets a job at South Florida.
Yeah, or it's his Halsley next, or his Pope next, and it's very analogous to Jimmy Johnson's draft chart, where he would say a number 1 pick is the same value as 18 6-round picks, and he went strictly by the chart. Now everybody has the chart, and everybody goes by the chart, and the draft has gotten more boring.
It's like Moneyball and sabermetrics. When the A's did it, they won 19 straight games and got to the playoffs. And then the Red Sox adopted the model and won the World Series. And now everybody in baseball does sabermetrics. And no, you're right. So you lost the advantage. This is one of the things I've always talked about that was different about what Josh Heupel or even a Mike Leach, rest in peace, or a lot of these other coaches that have systems. That's why they're not as similar to a Steve Spurrier, because I've always brought up the point, as I've learned historically, the fun and gun wasn't a system. It was just the name of his offense. Like, he actually just that was a play-to-play offense, right? It wasn't like a system that he ran.
Yeah, that one, copying Josh Heupel's would be difficult. Copying Steve Spurrier's is impossible.
Yeah, it is. Because that was his play calling.
It was him. By the way, Travis, I hate you. Imagine if Amari Hand played for Bob Osborne. A little. On that note, you know I love you like a brother. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Yes.
Make sure they know we're not on tomorrow.
Yes. Everyone, Mental Health Day tomorrow. Caleb's having a baby, and I've moved, and everything's crazy. So tomorrow, we're going to attend to our personal affairs, and hopefully our wives won't leave us, and we'll rejoin you at 10 a.m. on Monday. Derek, I'm sorry, but we'll rejoin you 10 a.m. on Monday. Don't be surprised if you see some surprises over the weekend. Don't forget about Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge. Sign up. Again, be a subscriber, and you sign up on our Hooker's Corner, and you can win $1,000 Garmin for nothing. You can be a free member on Hooker's Corner. To win those prizes from Sports Treasures, though, you need to be a paid member for just $9.98 a month. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker.